Hi, welcome back to Box of Life's Game channel. In this series we're going to be looking at Malifaux. Malifaux is a character-driven skirmish game set in this alternate Earth called Malifaux. It uses gothic, steampunk, Victorian horror and a dose of Wild West to develop the theme here, with a world rife with monsters, necropunks, man-machine hybrids, gunslingers. So you can see it's very character-driven 32mm tabletop miniature skirmish game. I'm a board gamer, and this is my first delve into the world of miniature gaming. So I'm going to be coming at it from the angle of a board gamer. So I'm going to be presenting Malifaux in the same way as I would present a board game. And from my initial forays into this, I understand the components are different. You get a bunch of miniatures and you get a book, a rule book, and you're off. And one of the good things about Malifaux is that you're building a small crew, and it's a skirmish game, so you don't need a lot of models. In this demo, I think I'm going to show you a crew of 3 or 4 figures. Normally it might be 5 or 6, and then you can have perhaps larger skirmishes. It's up to you. It's customizable, right? That's what makes miniature tabletop gaming different. Is you've got these customized bands of units, which we call crews in Malifaux. And you can accessorize it too. So there's going to be, apart from the rule book here and the miniatures, there are some other bits and pieces you're going to need or could need. So I'm going to talk you through what those things are. Now, as a board gamer, I kind of like the constraints and the framework within which a board game works. And I'm probably going to bring some of those constraints to the table. And I think that's great for me, and it's great for board gamers who are coming into this. So maybe you'll find this series is useful for you as a first step, because you will be more than likely, like me, learning a miniatures war game for the first time. So step 1 is to get the rulebook. Now this one is 1.5. Version 2 is coming out, and I think it's public beta in August, and then at Gen Con I think is going to be the release. Is that October, November time? Right, that's V2. I don't know anything about it, but look out for it. But I'm going to be teaching you 1.5 because that's what I've got right now, and why wait, right? Let's do it now. Now this is there's 2 rule books. This is the bigger one, and it's got lots of fluff in here. And I love all this, and this is one of the strong points of the game, is all this back history, all the fluff, all the short stories that go with it. So the first half of the book here is about the rules. The second half introduces you to the different factions and has some of the rules for those characters. And then we have some short stories and some fluff throughout the book, and then in the back we have some quick reference tables. So this is the rule book, 1.5. Next thing you're going to need is, what's this? A tabletop. Now the rules tell us that what we need for a standard game of Malifaux is 3 foot by 3 foot square table. And on that table you're going to be placing bits of terrain. Now, if you're like me and you're just starting out, there's a good chance you're not going to have any terrain, but you might have one of these starter boxes, and I've got a few here that I couldn't help but pick up, and these come with a pre-built crew, and that's a great way to start you off, is to just grab one of these boxes, and they're not terribly expensive, and you've got a pre-made crew. Obviously, the downside with this is you don't have the flexibility and the variability, because one of the things about Malifaux is that you set up your environment and your scenario and the aims of the game, and then you choose a crew that you feel is best equipped to handle that scenario, handle that terrain, and meet the winning objective. It's not like there's ever one objective. Your objective is not just going to be kill all the other guys' figures. Within the rules, there's a whole ton of objectives, and we'll look at those when we start setting up our game. And they're called strategies. There's lots and lots of different scenarios. It might be defeat all your opponent's figures. It may be that you have to hold a section of the board and keep that section of the board. It may be that you have to hunt some treasure, or maybe you have to deliver a message or knock out one particular unit of the opponent crew. One of these crew boxes come with these little foam inserts. I mean, it could be that you use that as a piece of terrain and just use your imagination, right? Instead of these 3D models that you can get, which, you know, as you develop the game and you want to spend more money, or if you're a handy artist, build your own. But you could use anything, you know. Use one of these boxes if you want to. You wouldn't be the first person to use, you know, cardboard loo roll or whatever to represent some piece of terrain. You know, imagine these as 2 houses. Whatever you want to do, all right, set up a terrain. Now, being a board gamer, I've got lots of board games. Dungeon Command is one of them. And what I found that the terrain that comes in Dungeon Command is the same scale as what we need for Malifaux. And the other thing is that in Malifaux you have indoor locations and outdoor locations, and in Dungeon Command you have indoor and outdoor terrain. And being a board gamer, I'm quite happy to work on this 2-dimensional surface and have that as my terrain. So I'm going to try something with you guys, and that is using Dungeon Command terrain tiles. These are all 1-inch square, and Malifaux works in inches. And I think that will help me also present. I mean, one of the things is with miniature gaming is that you're working in kind of an analog scale, and it's real scale that you measure with a tape. You know, you don't count squares like you do on a board game. You would actually just measure the distance. And one of the things in Malifaux is that you can't pre-measure stuff. So if you want to fire a gun and your gun has a range of 6 inches, you know, in a board game you can count the number of squares. In Malifaux you've got to look at it and think, well, does that look like that guy's within 6-inch range? You fire your gun and then you measure to see if that guy is within 6-inch range. So, alright, you've got to kind of use the terrain and landmarks on the terrain to gauge distances. But with these squares it's going to kind of help us when we're learning to game to get an appreciation of the scale involved as well as giving us something kind of useful to work around in terms of terrain features like forests. So this is a layout for Dungeon Command, and this will work perfectly for my little demo. It's not 3 foot by 3 foot, it's 2 foot by 1.5 foot, but if you had a bit more terrain you could easily make up a 3 foot square terrain using Dungeon Command tiles. Use what you have. You're board gamers watching this, no doubt, and you'll have a ton of stuff that you could, you know, improvise, use components from other games, make yourself a terrain, or get some stuff dedicated. This is how the figures are going to look on here, so it's going to work just fine for me, I think. Well, let's try it and see how we get on. You know, we can make use of these features on the board as well. We've got difficult terrain here, impassable terrain, hazardous terrain. You know, these things like this could be features in a landscape, like one of the things you can have is the hanging tree. It's kind of a nice macabre image from the front of the manual. You know, we could incorporate that into our game. And Malifaux's got rules for all that kind of stuff. So, but we'll see that as the setup develops. Right, what else are you going to need? You need some stack cards. When you buy your figures, they come with a stack card. And this is something I love too about this game. You haven't got to, you know, search through a book to find out the rules for your specific characters. Each one has a stack card. You can sleeve it. What I need is some double-sized sleeves, really. Some people laminate them so they can draw on them. And it's got everything you need to know about that character on that stack card. These are V2 stack cards, which is the latest. When second edition comes out, no doubt these will need to be updated. I've heard that they may be printing updated stack cards for the figures that you can buy in boxes. I don't know, let's wait and see. But if you're happy with 1.5, play 1.5. Well, certainly that's what I'll be doing for a while. Okay, next thing you need is a standard pack of playing cards, and this is what we call a fate deck. you need a standard pack of playing cards with 2 jokers, and the pip values on these cards are going to be significant. And Jack, Queen, King, so Jack is 11, Queen 12, King 13. And also the suits are significant. There's 4 suits in the Malifaux Fate deck. There's Rams, Tomes, Crows, Masks. And the way you work it is that hearts are Rams, clubs, Tomes, spades, crows, diamonds, masks. I printed out this reference card, and I've also got these cards here that I've printed out. Now these are available from Tabletop Geeks. Here's a link, I'll put it in the description. It's tabletopgeeks.com Malifaux downloads. And as a gamer, as a board gamer, I like to have these reference cards available. Because that kind of helps me with all the rules. This is a little card that just walks you through the setup. Here is a card that talks about a piece of terrain. Okay, so here's an ancient monument. So if I have one of these pieces of foam and I'm calling that an ancient monument, I could place the card here and that gives me the rules of the ancient monument. The thing is that these cards are really useful. So this is a great place to go and get some resources. Tabletopgeeks.com Malifaux downloads, and it's got a whole stack. These are straight out of the 1.5 rulebook. Okay, so these aren't things they've made up. This is stuff in the rulebook that you can keep as handy references, and we'll use that when we come to set up our encounter. We'll use that. Okay, but most people who play Malifaux, they won't use a standard deck of cards. They'll use one of these custom Fate decks. This is a puppet deck, I think, for Puppet Wars, that is also produced by Weird Miniatures, that's usable in Malifaux. The Malifaux custom decks, you can't go wrong. If you're a beginner, grab one of these. This was £4.50. Alright, so it's not cheap for a pack of cards, but it's not expensive, right? And this is perfect for a beginner, because instead of having to translate hearts, diamonds, spades, clubs, it's got mask, tome, crow, ram. It's got the suits on here, as well as all the pip values written down, so you're not looking what's the king, what's the queen. It's got the pip values on here. Also, different types of attack. So 1 to 5 will be a weak attack, 6 to 10 moderate, 11, 12, 13 will be a severe attack. And you don't need to do that translation because it's got them written on the card as well. As well as having some fabulous Malifaux artwork. Why do we need a fake deck? Well, this is one of the unique selling points of Malifaux as well, is that it doesn't use dice. There's no dice here. We use a deck of cards as well. And the other thing that attracted me as a board gamer, it's not just left to the fate of some dice or even the fate of the cards. You actually get a hand of cards, and you can work with that hand of cards. Yeah, so you can pull off different strategies by playing cards, just like you would in a board game. Right? So there's that kind of board gaming, card playing element to this game, where the fate is not with the dice, the fate is also in your hands. The other thing you're going to need is a tape measure. This is my little Malifaux accessories box. Now, again, I'm going to keep saying this, I'm a board gamer, I like things differently. I don't like using tape measure. So I made myself some little measuring sticks instead. So this is a 6-inch stick, 3 inches, 2 and 1. You know, one of the things that bothered me about miniature gaming, and maybe it's something I'll get over, is this idea that something might be within 2 inches of the other figure, and you've got to get your tape measure out and you've got to measure it. Well, I like the idea where instead of potentially having people quibbling over millimeters, you can just slide a little stick in. Is it within this 2-inch stick? Yes or no? So there, it's just out. What bothers me is, and maybe you guys can give me, if there's any experienced wargamers, how do you handle that? There's arguments of, is it no, it's 4.1, or no, it's 4.2, or no, it's 3.9. How do you do that? Well, for me, it's just going to be, if the stick fits, then it's it's in the distance. All right, that's how I'm going to do things, and I like that. I like that idea. So that works for me. I mean, the rules say you can use whatever measuring device you wish, as long as it's the right length, I suppose. The reason I have all these other bits and pieces is that you need some glass beads, tokens, counters to measure game effects. Now, it may come down to what figures you have. But for example, I've got the ice golem here, and one of his attacks is a blast, and a blast is 50mm diameter. So there's some 50mm diameter tokens. These are from the Tabletop.geeks.com. They've got some downloadable PDFs that you can stick on cardboard or do whatever you wish to and make some counters. So that's where I've got these from. They got some corpse counters and some scrap counters too. Actually, I can get rid of these now because I've just bought myself some of these corpse counters, which are quite neat. These are 30mm counters. I mean, the other thing is you can just get yourself some 30mm counters. So these are, and I've got some stickers here so I can, stick things on them to say what they are specifically. But you'll need an assortment of counters, and it does very much depend on which figures you use. So, maybe do what I did and got some 30mm counters and some stickers. These aren't quite good enough, but I might use these to stick on terrain to, record the height and that kind of stuff. So 30mm counters. These corpse counters are really good, because I think the two common counters you're going to need, apart from your blasts and your corpse, are scrap tokens. And I've picked up these scrap tokens. I've not opened them yet, actually. And these are pretty neat. These have got machines. So these are going to be my scrap tokens, or scrap counters. And these are from the Eden post-apocalyptic miniatures game. So these are, and they're 30mm, so they fit perfectly for me as scrap counters. And that's your lot, okay? So that's what we need. We need a board. We need a crew. We need the little foam inserts that we can pretend is terrain, or get some terrain, or improvise like me, use some terrain. Right, so table, figures, terrain, counters, fate deck, measuring device, tape measure. Now let me quickly introduce you to the cast of characters, because this is a game about miniatures after all. Let's have a look at some of the miniatures. I mentioned already, I think near the beginning, that in this game you play a particular faction, and all the figures for that faction kind of work together and have synergy with each other. You can, when you're building a crew, and your crew is normally, like say, 5 or 6, I think we'll probably only use 3 or 4 models, then you would tend to use all figures from the same faction because they work better together. But you can use figures from other faction, but they cost more to recruit. So when you're building your crew, you've got a certain number of points that you can use. Now in Malifaux we call this cost the Soul Stone cost. Okay, so you'll hear people talk about a 25 Soul Stone encounter, meaning they have 25 Soul Stones available to them to build their crew. An encounter is what we call a game in Malifaux. So you don't have a game of Malifaux, you have an encounter of Malifaux. Alright? So this is the Arcanists. And as their name suggests, these guys are all about using the magical energies that are inherent in Malifaux and having that energy manifest as magical abilities or spells. Alright, so there's magical spells in this game. Rasputina here has spells like Biting Chill, December's Curse, December's Touch, Ice Pillars and Whiteout. You see there's this icy theme with Rasputina, and with Marcus here, he's the Beast Master. There's these Sabertooth Cerberus and Raptors and the Razor Spine Rattler here. These are the Resurrectionists led by Master Seamus here. We can see we've got these rotten bells and these crooked men, resurrectionists, while they're all about reanimating the dead and using these soulless puppets, amusing only to the twisted minds of murderers and grave robbers. In a lesser state of painting here, these are the Neverborn, led by Master Pandora here. These are the strange creatures which stalk the ruined city of Malifaux. These are the creatures of your nightmares, and in Malifaux, the nightmares are reality. There's also a guild faction, for which I don't have any figures, but Malifaux is a place where there's this magical energy, these soul stones in the ground, and the guild is the fourth faction. They're the peacemakers, they're the people whose sole purpose really is to maintain this production of soul stones. They're the faction of law, the guild law. And at the other end of the scale, our final faction is the outcasts. I've got a sole representative of the outcast faction, a faction who represent the lowest caste in Malifaux. Why do I have a single figure from outcasts? Well, this guy's a mercenary. So there's some characters which are mercenaries, and they will happily, for no soulstone cost penalty, go work for any faction. So now you've met the cast, you've understood what you need to get going. In the next episode, we'll set up an encounter and we'll start to demo the gameplay.